Thank you, John. You know, David is a very convincing person. I would have probably said no if I'd have known the crowd was going to be this big. He always talks me into things. But I am going to say this before I speak about scholarships in Dalton State. I want to say that we are very, very lucky and fortunate to have David Elrod and his staff head up this foundation and their contributions to Dalton State and also the greater community of Dalton and Northwest Georgia. Thank you, Dave. David asked me to speak about three things tonight. The first one was what philanthropy means to me. Well, I'd never heard the word before. When I was young, philanthropy amounted to whatever we gave to the church. I never heard of giving money to civic organizations or to the poor, probably because we were a little bit poor. And so anyway, I heard about philanthropy sometime after college, so I looked the word up and to find out what it meant. And the Webster's Dictionary said that it was the altruistic expression of human kindness and human welfare in the advancement of the human good in a community. And that would include all of your charities and hospitals and, of course, educational institutions such as Dalton State College. As I said, I'd never heard of philanthropy until I came to Dalton, Georgia. And I started a business here in 1974. We had lived here a couple of years. We decided we wanted to live in this community and that it would be a good place to raise our family and pursue my business career. So I started a business. It was a small business at the time, and we achieved a little bit of success. I think maybe 30 years ago, somebody came to me and said, well, and I'm going to call another name here, it was Bob Kennard. He came to me and he said, Buchanan, you've done pretty good. You need to join the hospital foundation. You need to give some money to the hospital. I said, well, Bob, how much is that going to cost me? Oh, just $10,000. And I'm going, $10,000? I've never heard of giving that much money away. And that was a lot of money to me back then. And I said, I finally agreed to do it. That was my first venture into philanthropy. And as time went on and I got asked to be involved in other things, the next thing that came up was Dalton State College. And I'm going to have to attribute James Brown, and you all know that name. It's on the building right here on our campus. James taught me a lot about philanthropy, giving back to your community, doing the right thing. So I got involved with Dalton State College and joined the James Brown Fellowship. From there, I became more and more involved with Dalton State College. About 10 years ago, my involvement increased with Dalton State College, and David asked me to speak a little bit about why I am involved and why our family's involved in Dalton State College. There's a lot of reasons for that. Dalton State College, of course, I can't remember the exact numbers, but the economics is one of the reasons. They say that Dalton State College contributes economically to this community to the tune of $130 million a year. I believe that's right, isn't it, David? Yeah. So that's one reason. That's a business. it creates jobs. It creates other businesses. So that's an important thing. What else? Well, a lot of our young people that are in this community or in Northwest Georgia can't afford to go or are not so inclined to go to University of Georgia, the Georgia Tech, Alabama, Auburn, Tennessee, out of state to some of the big universities. So we need to have an opportunity for them in this community where they can educate themselves and realize their dreams and goals in life. We also bring in students from all over the state of Georgia, from other states, surrounding states. We bring students here from other countries. Some of these students are going to stay here, stay in this community, contribute. Some will go, and they'll take the story of Dalton, Northwest Georgia, and Dalton State College with them. These are our future leaders in our schools, in our churches, our civic organizations, and our government, local governments. Dalton State College, in short, is a huge asset for Dalton, Whitfield County, and Northwest Georgia. I think at our table here, two of our scholarship recipients, one is from Tryon, the other one is from Marietta. So our reach is going beyond just this community here. As John mentioned, we have two scholarships here at Dalton State College. Those scholarships came about in, I think it was, wasn't it 2005 when we started the capital campaign? And I was asked to be on the committee for that campaign. And of course, I was expected to contribute in some way to that capital campaign. So I started thinking, well, how can I do that? And what can I do to be the most good to this school and to this community in general? And I decided scholarships. The first scholarship that we had was the Bob Nicely Scholarship. Mr. Nicely was my high school English teacher. This is kind of a funny story. We were having our 40th high school reunion, and we were talking about teachers and what influence they had on us. And I said, you know, Mr. Nicely had the greatest influence on me of any teacher. I don't think I would have been able to make it through college without having been in Mr. Nicely's class and learned what I learned from him. And I mentioned, I wish I knew where he was. I'd like to call him up and thank him for what he's done for me. Well, one of my classmates, we're probably a half a dozen of us standing in a circle, he takes off and runs in the other room, comes back in a few minutes, and he's got this address and phone number all scribbled down. Here's Mr. Nicely's phone number. You can call him now. And I'm thinking, boy, did I open my mouth. Well, I put that phone number in my wallet, and a couple of weeks went by, and my wife and I were up early. It was fall, so we were up for a football game, and there was a party on Friday night, so she was getting ready, and I was just sitting around waiting on her. And I thought, well, I'm going to pass the time by calling Mr. Nicely. So I called him up. He answered the phone. I said, is this Bob Nicely that taught at Holston High School? Yes, it is. And I said, Mr. Nicely, this is a student from your past. Probably one that you'd rather not hear from. I said, this is Bob Buchanan from the class of '64. He said, oh, yes, I remember Bob Buchanan. He said, as I recall, you were a pretty good football player. Well, I said, Mr. Nicely, you're very kind. That's about all I was a football player. My grades in your class were not very good. He was kind again. He said, oh, as I recall, I believe you made C's. I said, no, Mr. Nicely, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I made straight D's in your senior English class. And he said, well, I just didn't recall that. And I said, well, that's very kind of you. And I said, but I've called to tell you something. I was so well prepared when I left your class, senior English, the next year in college, kids that had made A's and B's in their high school senior English class were struggling to make a C. I made A's. And that's what a good teacher will do for you. And he said, nobody's ever called me up and expressed their appreciation like this. He said, I can't tell you how much this means to me. So we agreed, after the conversation, we agreed to get together for lunch. So a little bit later that year, my youngest daughter was graduating in December. And so we came up, it was early December. I met him for lunch. I came up ahead of the rest of the family. The hour lunch turned into a 2.5-hour lunch, and it was wonderful. So then the next year rolls around, and this idea of scholarships comes up. And I said, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to honor Mr. Nicely with one of these scholarships. So that's what we did. And he was thrilled for that. We had him down. He gave the first scholarship, and the man was just ecstatic. He enjoyed it. He loved Dalton, Georgia, and he loved the fact that he was honored with that scholarship. Unfortunately, in a couple of years, he had a car accident and he passed. But at least he got to know and understand that someone appreciated what he had done. And that's what scholarships mean to me and to our family. Thank you.